As front-end developers, we often want to encapsulate UI elements into components so we can reuse them later. In modern frameworks, it's very easy to convert any element to a component. But when it comes to integrating Veloxi, there are a few extra steps that we need to do. In this video, I'm going to show you how to encapsulate this element into a React component while keeping Veloxi working as expected. If you are interested in learning how we created this element, I highly recommend watching the previous video, which I linked in the description of this video. Okay, so all of our code is inside this app component. So what we need to do is we want to move this element into its own component. So let's create that. Let's name it tabs. And let's copy all of this and paste it here. And also let's rename it to tabs. Let's import this. And let's use this from the properties. This is the list of strings we are using here. So all we need to do is just to pass it through properties and accept it from here. So let's say props, tabs, string, and it's an array. Now let's use it here and here. Now let's remove all of this and let's now use the tabs component. Let's import it and let's pass the tabs strings here. Now if we reload, everything should work as before. But now we have this element encapsulated into a React component. Now to make sure that this is reusable, let's duplicate this and try. If I click here, you can see there is something wrong with this animation. And the reason for that is because we are using the same plugin instance for both components. Let me show you. If I click here, you can see that this underline element has a plugin ID of 0. And for the second one, we also have the plugin ID of 0. This means that the same plugin instance is working on both views at the same time, which will cause several conflict issues. So to fix this, we need to assign this element into its own plugin instance. And to do that in Veloxi, we have to convert this plugin into a scoped plugin. The idea of scoped plugin is very simple. All we have to do is to pick some element and specify it as a scoped element. Which means, for example, if we specify this element as a scoped element, it will assign this element and all of its children to a different plugin instance. So in this example, the best element to be a scoped element is the tabs element. So let's go to that component and change this. So let's assign the plugin to this element. And all we can do is just cut this and paste it here. And let's give it the name of root. You can give it any other name, but as a convention, I usually use the root word here. Now the next step, we need to assign this element as the scoped element. So let's go to the plugin. All you have to do is just say tabs plugin.scope and the name of the view is root. Now let's save and try. If I click, it works. And again, if we check the plugin ID, this element has the plugin ID of 1. And if we go to the second one, you can see that the plugin ID is 7, which is a different one. Now, one thing we can improve here is that we only need to add the plugin if we are using the tabs component. You can see in the app component, we are adding the plugin even if we are not using the tabs component. So the best place to add this plugin is inside the tabs component. So ideally, we need to call this here, and we should import this. But you can see we don't have access to the app Veloxi instance. We can simply pass it through properties, but since the app Veloxi instance will be used throughout the app, it's better if we can pass it through a React context. The idea of React context is that it makes it more convenient to pass the same value through all components without having to pass it explicitly through the props. So let's create a context for the Veloxi app instance. So let's create a new file here and call it Veloxi context. So now instead of creating the app instance here, we need to create it inside the context. So let's import this from Veloxi. And then we need to wrap this app instance inside the React context. So let's say Veloxi app create context. And let's pass the app instance. And finally, we need to export this. Now in the app component, we can remove all of this. Now let's go to the tabs component and use that context. So let's say app, use context, and let's get the Veloxi app context. Let's save and try. Okay, so it works as expected, but it's now much easier to use the app instance throughout our React application. In this video, I showed you how to encapsulate this component using React, but the process should be very similar in any other framework. Please let me know if you have any questions in the comments section. I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.